So now let's talk about EBS volumes. And there are different volume types. They come in 6 different types today, and we can group them in several categories. The first one is GP2, GP3, which is a general purpose SSD volume that will balance price and performance for a wide variety of workloads. And this is something we've been using so far in this course. Then we have IO1 and IO2. They're highest performance SSD volumes that will be used for mission critical low latency and high throughput workloads. Then we have ST1 volumes, and they're low-cost HDD volume designed for frequently accessed, throughput-intensive workloads. We have SC1 volume, which are going to be the lowest cost HDD volume, and it will be designed for less frequently accessed workloads. Now, how do you define an EBS volume? Well, you can have several factors, for example, size, throughput, and IOPS, which means I/O, operations per second. And obviously, when in doubt, always consult the documentation. Now, for your EC2 instances, only GP2 and GP3 and IO1 and IO2 can be used as boot volumes. That means where the root OS is going to be running. So now let's go do a deeper dive into GP2, GP3, IO1, IO2, and the other ones, but GP2, the general purpose, and the provision IOPS are going to be the most important for your exam. So GP2 is cost-effective storage with low latency, and you can use it for system boot volumes, virtual desktop, development and test environments. The size can vary between 1 GB to 16 terabytes. And so we have differences between GP2 and GP3. GP3 is the newer generation of volumes. So GP3 gives you a baseline of 3,000 IOPS and a throughput of 125 megabytes per second. And then we can increase IOPS up to 16,000 and throughput up to 1,000 megabytes per second independently. Okay, so they're not linked. For GP2, this is the older version. They're small GP2 volumes that can burst up to 3,000 IOPS, and then the size of the volume and the IOPS are linked. That means that if you increase the IOPS, if you increase the number of gigabytes on your volume, then you're going to get 3 more IOPS up to 16,000 IOPS. And so that means that if you have 5,334 gigabytes, then you will have 16,000 IOPS and you'll max it out. So what do you remember from this slide? You remember that in GP2, GP3, this is for cost-effective storage latency, and in GP3 you can independently set the IOPS and the throughput, whereas for GP2 they're linked together. Now the other types of volume that will come up in the exam is provision IOPS, and this is going to be a very good use case when you have a critical business application that needs sustained IOPS performance, or applications that need more than 16,000 IOPS. So in general, you will have a use case where you have a database workload, for example, something that really uses the storage, and it is very sensitive to storage performance and consistency. In that case, switching from a GP2 or GP3 volume to IO1 or IO2 volume is going to be the answer. So if we consider IO1 and IO2, IO2 is the newer generation, they can be between 4 and 16 terabytes. The max IOPS you're going to get is 60,000 IOPS for Nitro EC2 instances. So remember, Nitro EC2 instances gives you access to a higher level of IOPS. And if you don't have a Nitro EC2 instance, then you're going to get 32,000 IOPS maximum. And with IO1 and IO2, you can increase the provision IOPS independently from the storage size, just like GP3. And why do we use IO2? Well, it has more durability and more IOPS per gigabyte at the same price of IO1, so today it makes just sense to use IO2. And there is a preview of IO2 Block Express, which is between 4 gigabytes and 64 terabytes. And this is an even higher performance type of volumes. This gives you sub-millisecond latency, and you're going to get 256,000 IOPS maximum with a ratio of IOPS per gigabyte of 1,000 per 1. And finally, we'll see this in the next lecture, the EBS volume types of provision IOPS support EBS multi-attach. So now let's quickly touch upon ST1 and SC1. So they cannot be a boot volumes, this can only be for the previous types of volumes. You can get the size up to 16 terabytes, and we get 2 kinds of volumes here. We have the Throughput Optimized HDD, so ST1, which is great for big data, data warehousing, and log processing, which gives you a max throughput of 500 megabytes per second and a max IOPS of 500. And then for cold HDD, so SC1, this is for archive data, so data that is infrequently accessed. And this is when you would use it when you need to have the lowest possible cost. Here the max throughput is 250 megabytes per second and the max IOPS is 250 as well. Now you don't have to remember all these details going into the exam, you just need to understand the differences at a high level of all these volumes. So the general purpose SSD versus the provision IOPS SSD in case you need a database versus some ST1 and SC1 in case you need to have high throughput and lowest cost. And so you can find a summary of all I said in this link right here, okay? Which is a screenshot I just took you. So don't need to remember the details again, but remember that if you want to get also over 32,000 IOPS, you need EC2 Nitro with IO1 or IO2. And that will be it for this lecture. So I hope you liked it, and I will see you in the next lecture.